What's going on, everybody? Ricks TV back with another video, and in today's video we'll be discussing an LA Times article pertaining to a potential trade that involves the Los Angeles Lakers and the Orlando Magic. This article was written by Dan Wookey and the headline reads, "Newsletter Lakers, will they make a big trade move? Let's debate." So he goes on to say that, do the Lakers have a big move? No. Okay, moving on. Just kidding. This topic deserves some more discussion than the two-letter truth printed above. The biggest issue the Lakers will face heading into the trade season is the lack of players and draft picks that people will want to make a deal. It's simple as that. The Athletic Sam Amick reported this week that the Lakers have had internal discussions about possibly trading Russell Westbrook, but according to my sources around the NBA, the appetite for the player making $44 million this season and $47 million the next is very low. Maybe a team with a playoff hungry owner could convince themselves that Westbrook's competitiveness would push their team into one of the top 10 spots in each conference and maybe past the play-in round. But would those teams want to send back the kind of players in a trade that will help the Lakers win, weakening their own position to do so? Again, the chances of that are very low. Okay, so then what could the Lakers actually offer in a trade? Their best package are centered around Talen Horton-Tucker, their 21-year-old wing who has struggled to play consistently after the team signed him to a 3-year deal and more than $30 million. A package of Horton-Tucker, Kendrick Nunn, who hasn't debuted for the Lakers yet, and a pair of veteran players on minimum deals could return a player making around $20 million a season. So he goes on to say that this is where we say the multi-player trades like this are complicated because of roster size rules. If you take on 4 players, you have to have room for them, which means waiving other players that you might like or more than the Lakers salary filler. That means involving another team to take on the players, and they'll want an asset to do so, meaning even more players are moving. See what I mean? So he goes on to talk about Jerami Grant, and then he says, if it's not a player like Grant, then the target quickly shifts to players like Orlando's Terrance Ross, a nice offensive player who could catch fire in a second. But does he really move the needle enough for the Lakers to part ways with their best only young trade asset? So if you guys would like to read the full article, the link is in the description box. Now honestly, I do agree that Jerami Grant and Terrance Ross are the two best available potential trading options for the Lakers at the current moment, and realistically they are the only two players that I believe would be a great fit inserted into the LeBron James system. Terrance Ross is a phenomenal shooter that once he gets hot and catches fire, bruh, the crypto arena is in danger of burning down to the ground. Okay, now despite his recent struggles, which could attribute to the fact that he's only played 31 games this season, and probably because the Orlando Magic are in the rebuilding process, so they are most likely looking to give the younger players more time and more minutes as well. So that's why Terrance Ross is probably struggling. I think that if the Lakers were to trade for Terrance Ross, I really don't think that you could lose in any way possible, because honestly I think the only player that should be top priority of being shipped off from the Lakers with a no shipping label attached to him is Russell Westbrook. Okay, as I've mentioned in my previous video, Westbrook is extremely unpredictable in the postseason. He makes really bad decisions down the stretch, causes turnovers, does the rock the baby dance way too early, and oftentimes can cost his team the game. Okay, now I'll also say this: if LeBron James, aka Le GM, decides to stick with Westbrook past this trade deadline, from that point on there's no one to blame but LeBron James. LeBron James must be held accountable by you LeBron boys, okay, because he knows that Westbrook is the problem. He knows that this Westbrook, LeBron James and AD project has not worked, and if he knows that going into the postseason only means one thing: you are using Westbrook as a pawn so that the so-called sports analyst that's on your payroll could blame Westbrook if everything goes wrong and you lose, and you can sit in that post-game interview and pretend like you are so supportive of your friend and your teammate Russell Westbrook. Okay, now unless LeBron James walks over to Frank Vogel and just tell him to just bench Russell Westbrook in the 4th quarter to give you a better chance at winning, that's what you better do, because that's your best bet. That is your best bet, because that gives the Los Angeles Lakers, or should I say the Los Angeles LeBrons, the best chance of winning. Okay, so yes, give LeBron James everything that he wants, so there's no excuses. But I would trade Russell Westbrook for Jerami Grant, which undoubtedly makes the Lakers a defensive force with AD back in the starting lineup to protect the paint. Or if the Lakers do decide to take the route of trading for Terrance Ross, I would keep THT and Malik Monk, but then trade Russell Westbrook for Ross. okay? Rick Ross voice, okay? With some draft picks to get him off the books, you know, to get Russell Westbrook off the books so we can go after one of the big name free agents this summer. Gary Payton just recently did an interview and gave his response to an interviewer comparing the Lakers, this current Lakers squad, to the 04 Lakers, and he said that this team does not compare at all. They was more so in their prime, and this team isn't. He was talking about the injuries, and he also said that this team doesn't know their role, and you heard me say this multiple times, but over this recent stretch of games, it seems as though they're building chemistry and finding an identity with the young guys. So he's absolutely correct. I think they should stick with the young guys. But anyway, y'all let me know what y'all think. Y'all get in that comment box, like, share, subscribe. I'm out.